Indian markets sulk as global equities react to Donald Trump's Greenland tariff threats. Realty and energy are the big drags, while capital goods and power stocks eke out some gains.
Reliance Industries posts its highest operating profit in 7 quarters, with O2C and Jio delivering strong performance. Even as oil and gas exhibits weakness, the consumer business is spun off from retail even as work on Jio's IPO progresses. Analysts maintain an upbeat stance on the stock.
Tech Mahindra shares are trading with gains today after the company beat street expectations on most counts for the third quarter, while Wipro has taken a drubbing as it falls short on growth expectations, even as profitability shows a marked improvement.
Bharat Coking Coal makes a stellar debut on the bourses, with the stock listing at an over 95% premium to its offer price of 23 rupees a share. The country's largest coking coal player has given a strong guidance for FY27.
And shares of Interglobe Aviation have climbed after the DGCA slaps a small fine, calls for a bank guarantee, cautions the CEO and issues warnings to key executives. The focus now shifts to reform measures and normalization of schedules. Good afternoon, you're with us here on Business Lunch. We are coming to you live from the CNBC TV18 Motilal Oswal studios. I'm Hormas Patakia. With me, as always, Arundhati Ramanan. Arundhati, good afternoon.
Hi guys, good afternoon, Hormaz. We're starting the week off on a weak note. All of those indices languishing in the red, Nifty managing to stay around that 25,550 mark.
Indeed, and it's been that kind of a day for our markets, right? We've been in this range of around 50 points for the last couple of hours now. Every time the Nifty goes towards 25,550, it faces some selling pressure, moves down towards 25,500 and then sees a recovery again back towards that 25,550 mark. It has not moved anywhere in the last couple of hours ever since that move towards 25,600 got sold off earlier in the day. But we are counting down to some bigger broader market earnings. But before we get to that, the index heavyweights not doing well today, and that has had an impact. Of course, the global markets being in risk-off mode has a bigger role to play in this. But with the index constituents, be it the likes of ICICI Bank or be it the likes of Reliance, not doing well, and that has had a bigger impact on the Nifty today. ICICI Bank now down 3%, Reliance now down 3.5% as we speak. So both of these names together contributing to around 130 points to the Nifty downside. But the broader markets have been fairly okay. There's a lot of stock-specific activity and more earnings reactions to track in today's session.
Absolutely. And let's look at some of those sectors, right? We got that metal index, which was actually doing really well at the start of the day. It was leading from the front, but it's come in for some profit booking right now. It's about 0.1% in the red. However, Hind Zinc is still gaining momentum. It's nearly 3% higher. It got an upgrade from HSBC, and all eyes are on the company's earnings that should be out in just a bit. We've got Hindalco also doing quite well. Nalco also in the green. The other sector that's managing to stay in the green and is now leading from the front is that FMCG pack. We've got HUL, ITC and Britannia gaining in trade today, helping the Nifty stay in the green, helping the Nifty go higher. On the downside, you have that Realty index, which is the top losing index. Godrej Properties, Brigade and Prestige Estates all falling over 3% in trade. Private banks also in the red on the back of some weakness that was seen in its earnings. We've got ICICI Bank and HDFC Bank, all of them falling in trade.
But let's begin the show by getting a brief of the big earnings that were released over the weekend. We just spoke about a lot of them, but Upasana has a lot more on her list. Upasana, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hormas. Certainly. Now, Reliance Industries is in focus as the stock is under pressure in tandem with the market despite reporting strong set of numbers. The revenue saw an uptick of 4%. Operating margins stood at 17.4% versus 18% sequentially. Now, JP Morgan has given an overweight rating with a target price of $16.75 per share, and it says that the company's PAT is in line, but the internals tend to be weak according to the brokerage. Now, Wipro also reported its number. Q4 guidance of 0 to 2% is what disappoints the street. Overall, the IT revenue has seen an uptick of 3.3% sequentially, and margins stood at 17.6% versus 16.7% sequentially. Tech Mahindra is the next one. Revenue and margin beat on the stock. Margins have expanded from the low of 4.7% in Q2 FY24 to as high as 13% in the current quarter. Now, JP Morgan has given an upgrade with the overweight rating, and the new target price is 2,100 per share. Tata Tech reported a weak set of numbers. The total operating revenue has seen an uptick of 3.2%, and EBITDA margin stood at 14.1% with a downtick of 160 basis points. Netweb Technologies is the next one on our radar. The strong beat on revenue as compared to the analyst estimations. Now, revenue has seen an uptick of as high as 1.4 times on a Y-on-Y basis. And lastly, coming to BHEL, just reported its Q3 numbers just a while ago. The revenue has seen an uptick of 16%, but overall it misses the street estimates. And lastly, the margins are at 6.4% versus 4.2% on year-on-year basis. So overall, it's a miss.
All right, overall a mix over there. All right, Upasana, thank you so much for those details. But we've also got in some big banking earnings over the weekend, right? Gaurav joins us with those details. Gaurav, it was a busy weekend for you.
Well, as if you look at the weekend, all the banks except for UCO banks are currently under pressure, and the reason being that, first let's talk about HDFC Bank. Now, there were some positives and negatives. When we look at positives, net interest margins that increased for HDFC Bank, and at the same time, if you look at credit costs, that came down almost by 10 basis points. Let's also not forget about the LDR ratio commentary that management gave, that they believe that in the fourth quarter of FY26, they will see LDR ratios coming below and around 95% levels. But at the same time, on the negative side, one of the executive directors, he has chosen not to seek for reappointment as he's looking out for other opportunities. And at the same time, bank also reported 500 crores worth of additional provision because of the regulatory inspection in this quarter. As a result, we saw some pressure in this counter. Other than that, let's talk about ICICI Bank. Now, a big negative factor here was the credit cost, and the reason being that bank reported around 1,283 crores rupees worth of provisions because regulators asked them to do so, and this is linked to the agri PSL portfolio, which was non-compliant with the regulatory actions and requirements. And that is the reason why, if you look at credit cost, that inched up around 0.74% versus the street's expectation of 50 basis point. And that is the reason why, if you look at profit also, that declined by 4% and it was 9% lower than the street's expectation. On the flip side, Mr. Sandeep Bakshi, he got reappointed for the next 2 years as MD and CEO, but it looks like market is not taking that positive news, and that is the reason why we are seeing some pressure in this counter. It is down more than 2%. Let's talk about RBL Bank now. We are seeing a sharp fall in this bank, and the reason being that on the last trading session, we saw the bank actually inched up higher because of the high expectations. But when it comes to results, now credit costs disappointed in this quarter as well. What happened is that credit costs increased almost by 40 basis points. And that is the reason why, if you look at profit, that came in at around 210 crores. Now, this was lower than the seats expectation of the profitability, which they were expecting at around 260 crores, and that is the reason why we are seeing some pressure in this counter. Remember, management commentary was also not that positive because they say that credit cost pressure will remain in the credit card segment over the next 2 to 3 quarters. Let's move on to Yes Bank now. Now, what was positive is that the gross slippages that came down, and at the same time, net interest margins, they also improved almost by 10 basis points. But on the negative side, we saw ROE expansion, which was supported by the security receipt gains, and that is the reason why market has not taken it in a positive way. The stock opened in a positive move, but now it is under pressure.
Every weekend, one weekend every quarter where Gaurav is possibly the busiest man on the planet, with swarmed with bank results. Gaurav, thank you for summarizing that for us in brief. Mind you, some flashes on your screen. The Power Minister has just mentioned that there is no change in the government's policy about market coupling, and this comes on the lines of the APTEL hearing today. The electricity amendment bill will be introduced in Parliament during the budget session. That is, of course, a lot of things that the Power Minister has highlighted other than the market coupling bit, but that's the main line to watch out for. The market coupling bit, no change in the government's policy with regards to that, and you can see the reaction now on IEX. This has been one of the major overhangs on the stock. From levels of 200 plus, the stock had declined to levels of 130, still languishing at those levels. There have been multiple hearings with regards to this market coupling overhang on at the Electricity Appellate Tribunal, one of which is scheduled today as well. It'll be interesting to see what transpires there. But for now, IEX 3.5% lower, extending its losses. The Power Minister has made it very clear that there is no change to the government policy with regards to market coupling. We'll get you more on this in just a bit. But the other major news bit is from Sun Pharma, and the company is now planning to expand its US operations with a large acquisition. CNBC Awaz's Yatin Mota is joining in with more on this. Yatin, tell us, what are your sources telling you?
Well, sources at this point are indicating that Sun Pharma is raiding a very big acquisition in the US markets and is in talks which are primary in nature with Organon. Now, Organon is a very large enterprise in the US markets, focusing on women health as well as biosimilars and specialty drug portfolios, which probably seem to have interested Sun Pharma. Organon market capitalization is close to $2 billion and they have close to $8 billion in debt. So that takes the enterprise value of the entire acquisition close to $10 billion. As of now, things are not clear whether or not it will be a slump sale or a full acquisition of Organon. However, when we contacted Sun Pharma, they said that they will not comment on speculative stories. However, if you look at Organon's portfolio, as I mentioned earlier, it is necessary for Sun Pharma to have exposure to the US markets. Organon currently has 26% sales coming in from the US markets, and a similar sales figure comes in from the EU market, and that is where it becomes a strategic fit for Sun Pharma, which has currently nearly $4 billion of cash on its balance sheet, which can be utilized for such acquisitions. But as I mentioned earlier, the talks are primary in nature and may not be conclusive at this point in time. But mind you, Organon shares in the US markets are up nearly 28% in the last 1 month.
All right, Yatin, many thanks for taking us through those details. Now, Bharat Coking Coal, India's largest producer of coking coal, has enjoyed a stellar debut, listing with gains of over 90%. Earlier, we spoke to the management to understand what the company's growth trajectory could look like. Take a look.
If you see the washery, which is the main focus of BSEL growth story, currently the washing capacity is around 13.5 million ton. We are going to make it double. Double means we are going to close to 26 million ton. Last year we supplied close to 2 million ton to steel sector clean coal, which will be converted almost 5 times to 9 to 10 million ton. If you see in terms of net realization, the net realization per ton of washed products sold to the different customer, to the steel, to the power and the other customer, and the net realization of a raw coal sold to the customer. If you see, it's almost 3 times. So we are going to get a very high net realization when we grow on washery step by step, and by 2030 we are expecting in excess of 5,000 crore EBITDA and close to 3,000 crore of PAT.
Boy, what a start this has been for Bharat Coking Coal. 82% higher still in comparison to its issue price. Of course, at one point was up 97%. They listed at around 45 rupees, still at 42. And made some money for those who received an allotment in the IPO. Of course, the first main board IPO of 2026. So it's been a good start to primary market activity for the new year. But the other stock that's doing well today is Interglobe Aviation, IndiGo's parent, and this is after DGCA had imposed a 22 crore penalty on the company for flight disruptions last month, which has been interpreted as a relief as the street was expecting a larger hit. Shivani is here with more details on this. Shivani, tell us more.
Well, yes, Hormaz, the aviation regulator DGCA has finally taken the enforcement action against IndiGo, imposing a total penalty of 22.2 crore rupees over the massive flight disruptions that we saw in early December. Now, this includes 20.4 crore rupees for 68 days of continued violation of flight duty time limitation norms, levied at a maximum permissible rate of 30 lakh rupees per day, along with an additional 1.8 crore rupees one-time systemic penalty for broader operational and management failure. Beyond this, the monetary fine, DGCA has also directed IndiGo to furnish a 50 crore rupees bank guarantee with phased release linked to DGCA monitored systemic reforms across leadership, oversight, crew rostering and digital systems as well. Now, the financial impact might seem mild at this point, but let's look at the broader picture. It is significant. IndiGo had already said that it has paid over 500 crore rupees in passenger compensation for cancellations and long delays and has processed around 610 crore rupees in refunds till December 7. Mind you, refund outgo is expected to rise further from here. Taking together the penalty, compensation and refunds and the compliance-linked safeguards, IndiGo's total financial exposure now stands at 1,180 crore rupees. So the 22 crore rupees penalty might seem mild, but the overall exposure stands at 1,180 crore rupees. Back to you.
All right, and Interglobe Aviation is the top Nifty gainer there, over 4% in the green. Thank you so much for those details, Shivani. On that note, it is time for us to head into a short break. The annual World Economic Forum is underway in Switzerland's Davos. We get you a roundup of all the action. On the other side, stay tuned. Welcome back. You're still with us on Business Lunch. CNBC TV18 Shireen Bhan is in Switzerland's Davos, where top world leaders will gather for the World Economic Forum amid US President Donald Trump's tariff threat on NATO and European allies. She joins us now to give us a roundup of what we can expect this year. Shireen?
Focus is clearly on what President Trump is going to say here in Davos, and he's almost lit a match even before he arrives here in Davos. I think his decision to impose tariffs on NATO allies ahead of his Davos visit is strategic. It's a conscious move, it's a conscious decision, and of course that has rallied European leaders who are also going to be here in Davos together. You see statements coming in from the EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen, you've seen comments coming in from the German Chancellor, from Keir Starmer. In fact, Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, will be addressing the nation today. But let me show you the USA House. Right behind us, that is the USA House. This is the very first time that the US has actually set up a house here. Of course, this is where US government officials will be stationed through the course of this week. Now, as the President Borge Brende was telling me in our exclusive conversation yesterday, President Trump has been a regular in Davos. Last year, he made an appearance, but that was virtual. This time, he's possibly going to be here for more than 24 hours, in Borge Brende's words. There's a whole host of bilateral meetings lined up. Also, meetings with business leaders. The World Economic Forum is expected to host a special reception where Trump is going to get an opportunity to meet global business leaders. Now, this USA House used to be where our colleagues at CNBC for many, many years had set up their lounge. This would be the CNBC lounge. This has now been taken over by the US. And of course, Trump is arriving with the largest ever US delegation of secretaries. Lupnick is going to be here. Bessent is going to be here. Jameson Greer will be here. Chris Wright, the Energy Secretary, is going to be here. Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, a whole bunch of other US officials will be here. And now, as I pointed out, this is about Greenland. Venezuela figures nowhere in the conversations. It's moved to Greenland and Trump's ambitions. He's not backing down at all. In fact, if anything, he's doubling down on the US ambition to take Greenland, tweeting just a short while ago, or truth socialing just a short while ago, saying Europe has done nothing to ensure the safety and security of Greenland, and so the US is going to go all in. Separately, there's also a talk around the Gaza peace plan that President Trump has put together. Remember, countries like India, Prime Minister Modi, have been invited to join the peace board, so to speak. And of course, that has run into its own set of controversies. Tony Blair kind of distancing himself from the plan that the Trump administration is putting forward of a paid membership. Of course, you possibly see comments coming in on that as well. Now, the threat of retaliatory tariffs from the EU. Reports suggest that the EU is putting together a bunch of retaliatory tariffs, and that could be pretty significant as well. Will we see an announcement happen here as Davos kicks off with President Trump being here? We don't know, but the mix, the environment is anything but conciliatory. Davos, the theme this year is dialogue in a contested world. And at this point in time, what we're seeing is unilateral actions with little space for discussion and dialogue.
Bringing you all the hot headlines from a very, very cold Davos. Shireen Bhan there of CNBC TV18. Stay tuned for all the live coverage from there through the course of the day. Take a short break. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now the markets are dealing with yet another bout of geopolitical uncertainty this year as US President Donald Trump aggressively eyes the acquisition of the self-governed territory of Greenland from Denmark. The US president has announced a 10% tariff on nations that do not support Washington's stance on Greenland, leading to concerns over the future of NATO and European security. European countries are also debating potential retaliatory measures to counter such tariffs. Precious metal prices have surged in the 19 days of 2026 so far as uncertainty has hit a new high. Gold prices have rallied over 8%. Silver is up already 30% so far this year, while platinum has seen a rise of around 5% so far. Not to forget tin, that's also up nearly 30%.
And moving on to the latest on the geopolitical developments in Greenland, which could potentially disrupt transatlantic relations. Here's a CNBC report for more on this.
U.S. President Donald Trump escalating issues on Greenland, vowing to slap more tariffs on 8 European countries if they do not allow the United States to take control of the Danish territory. Countries including Denmark, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom will face an additional 10% tariff in February, and that will increase to 25% in June. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was on NBC's Meet the Press overnight, where he reiterated Greenland is a point of national security.
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen, and it might not be next year, might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. We would keep our NATO our NATO guarantees, and if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now, peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
Europe, though, has vowed to support Greenland and Denmark and is now looking for a way to push back. As European leaders, EU leaders, that is, get ready for an emergency summit this Thursday. According to the Financial Times, retaliatory tariffs are on the table, targeting nearly $110 billion in U.S. goods. Now, the other option is the Anti-Coercion Instrument, or ACI, which has never been used before, but would limit American access to public tenders, investments, or service exports. This could be a big blow to big tech firms located in the EU. And overall, it could be the most serious rupture of transatlantic ties in decades.
Mind you, the U.S. markets are shut this evening on account of a holiday, but the Dow futures are down over 400 points. So keep an eye out on those as well. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has also invited India to join his Gaza Board of Peace initiative, which aims to resolve global conflicts. Starting with the Gaza conflict, Trump has sent a letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi that was shared on social media by the U.S. ambassador to India, Sergio Gore. The president said it was his great honor to invite the Prime Minister to join him in a critically historic and magnificent effort to solidify peace in the Middle East, and at the same time to embark on a bold new approach to resolving global conflict.
And with that, it is a wrap on this edition of Business Lunch. Midcap Radar takes all the action forward.